Well, hi everybody, my name's Donna Vio, and I'm from Salem, New Hampshire. And I'm going to just introduce myself and tell you a little bit about me. I'm not going to ask you all about every little thing of you. I just want to know, first off, all of you know how to sew. You've sewn before, correct? That's a good start. Has anybody ever used an antique machine before? Wow, we got a few. That's good.
Not antique, but better than.
Yeah. Not a treadle. Nobody's used it. Has anybody used a treadle? We have a treadler. Awesome. 2. Good. 3. We have 3 treadlers. Awesome. Yeah, you know, you can do a lot with straight stitches. So let me explain something. I learned how to sew when I was only 5. I learned on an antique machine, not a treadle. It was electric, but it was a black cast iron, only did a straight stitch. And it was my grandmother who taught me. And my dad, her son, worked for Singer Sewing Machine back in the 1940s. He was a mechanic, he did house calls, and he fixed people's machines. And he maintained, I inherited that machine that I learned on, and he maintained it for me. And you know, with a straight stitch, you can do calligraphy, beautiful calligraphy. And he could do this. And he would come maintain my machine, and he would write my name beautifully, Donna. And then he'd show me it all done, but he never showed me how he did it. I was busy with kids in the other room, and then he'd come out with the nice Donna, and he'd say, look what I made for you. So I never watched him do it. Unfortunately, he's not around anymore, because I would have loved to see him do calligraphy on one of these machines. I still haven't figured it out. But it's possible with a straight stitch machine. So I've done every job on earth. I swear to God, I've done insurance sales, I've worked in the deli department, I've done accounting for a large software company. I finally decided I didn't want a desk job anymore, and in 2006, I started my own company, The Masquerade. I do costumes and quilts and alterations, and I opened up a YouTube page in 2009. So I have 700 people that have come to my studio for the alterations and classes and that kind of thing. But I have 15,000 subscribers to my YouTube page. So people are starting to see my face. And I do quilting tutorials, but I also do tutorials on these machines and teaching you how to use them, teaching you how to repair them, how to thread them, all kinds of stuff. So that's where I've become known, and that's why Steve found me, and that's why I'm here. So today we're going to go over the different kinds of machines. And you have, this side of the room has the shuttle, not the shuttle, that has the rotary bobbins, the ones that you're familiar with. Probably the plastic ones are what you're familiar with, but the little round bobbins. The other side over here, these little 6 machines, and we have 3 brave people. They have, they're operating on what's called a long bobbin. And it goes into a shuttle that looks like a boat or a bullet, but it's still operating in the same way. Your needle goes down, it wraps around the bullet, and it pulls up a stitch. With the rotary, it's the same thing. Your needle goes down, it wraps around the rotary round bobbin, and it pulls up a stitch. So they're all locking stitch machines. I've brought some hand crank old antique machines with me, and I'll show them to you upstairs when we have pizza at lunch. I have a chain stitch machine, so it doesn't have a bobbin. And I have a couple of machines that are not Singers. They're foreign machines that are hand crank machines. And they're actually built with the Singer blueprints. Because back in the day, Singer was the one that was known. He became known because he was the first one to offer a charge system where you could come in and not have to pay in full for your machine. You could take it home and then make payments over the next 2 years because they were so expensive back then for somebody. A machine couldn't be a whole year's salary. So because of that option, he became known, and he also did a lot of advertising that the other companies weren't doing. They weren't paying for advertising. So he might not have had the best machine, but he was the most known for the domestic sewing machine. And because of that, other companies went to him and asked for rights for his blueprints for when they were designing their own machines. And so many of the other countries that came up with their own machines are based on these that you're sitting at right now. You're going in the wrong direction. It's supposed to go this way. Now you go in the right direction. And it has nothing to do with your foot motion. Once you've stopped the machine, you're always going front and back with your feet.
Get it started and you roll it on.
I do. So there's a couple ways to understand how the treadle's moving. So if you turn your hand wheel toward you, you will notice that your pedal moves without your feet on it.
No, actually. I'm having a little trouble.
It's very tight.
And you can practice trying to go in the same direction.
Okay, yeah. Try that.
Keep going, keep going, keep your feet going.
Do it without any.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
So if you remove the thread from your machine, if you haven't treadled yet, I encourage you to remove the thread from your machine and try to get it going in the right motion. So, are you having a hard time doing this like this? Yeah, sometimes it's not engaging it. You want to make sure that you can get the treadle moving in the one single direction. And it's in the direction that your wheel is coming toward you. So if you turn your wheel, you can see your treadle pedal moving. So turn your wheel down toward you. And once you feel that pedal moving, keep it going in the same direction. Go back.
Let me just put this down and I'll hook it.
There you go. And now once you keep it going, it's going to stay in that direction. If you stop, and then you start to treadle again like you were, it might be going the opposite way. You have to be very careful. Every time you start up, you have to pull it towards you, pull the wheel toward you, and feel the pedal to make sure the wheel is turning towards me. So that means I'm going to start treadling by pushing my heel, toe, heel, toe, heel, toe, heel, toe. Let me stop it. Let me try that again. Oh, it's still, I'm lucky. It's still going in the same direction. Sometimes, the first time you do it, you push your heel, it's going one way, and the next time you do it, you push your heel, it's going the other way. If you want to have your hands on your project, you can look at which way your wheel's going to start to turn. Oh, when I push with my toe, it goes the wrong way, so I don't want to do that. I'm going to push with my heel, and then I can keep the rhythm going. So if that's easier for you than actually feeling it by turning the wheel, I mean, that's the other way I do it. I turn the wheel and I have my foot lightly on that pedal down below, and I can feel which way the pedal's going. And I don't want to fight it, and I just want to keep it going. I want to make sure that all of you can get this treadle moving non-stop in the correct direction before we put any fabric in here, because once you stop and you start stitching the other way, you get a knot underneath, the thread breaks. It has to always go in the same direction. So that by itself, right, I mean, you won't be able to use the treadle machine if you can't get this motion. So let's, if you've never been able to make it work, just pull the thread out of it and let's try to make it work without like making a thread mess.
I just think I would back stitch by hand.
There is no back stitching.
Oh, we won't.
These machines do not do a reverse. They do not do a reverse stitch, no matter what. They can't. So if you want to lock a stitch, you make sure the stitches are really small, and then you don't have to back tack. If you want to be using big stitches and you want to back tack, you're going to start with your piece reversed, do a couple stitches, spin it, and then do your seam, spin it back, and do a couple stitches. What we're doing today, we're going to be using small stitches, so you don't have to worry about back tacking. When you use a small enough stitch, it won't pull out. So, can I see the whole room running at the same time? Well, when we find the right shuttle. You're going the wrong way. I can feel it, it's going the wrong way.
Okay, so
It has to go forward. Up.
So
There you go, there you go.
okay.
You got it. I think it's going to click. I think you got it. Yeah, you got it.
Hey, hey. Yeah, but when I put the shuttle in, it's going to be like here.
And then go through there, through that one, and then through the needle. I think it's
Right or from the left?
now that's a good question on this machine. Is yeah, so they continue to groove would be on that side. Because the 15, they changed it over the years. I have one. I've had customers come in with them, and one's threaded one way, one's threaded the other way. It depends on the year of the machine.
Oh, really?
They change the model often. I didn't bring my graph with me to tell me. I know.
I mean, I can understand if they said, oh, this is a left-handed machine.
What?
Who else needs a fabric? Is everyone all set? Okay, I'll use this one. Yeah, that's plenty big enough. All right, so you guys need help over here. She's help with this threading. All right. In there, or it's actually not a bowl.
Okay, so this one does go through the hole.
It does.
You were describing something and I'm looking for it. Is this supposed to be underneath this bar or over it?
No, it's just supposed to give you a little bit of a push, and it does, and that's exactly what it's supposed to be doing.
Okay.
It's actually
That one-
better than, and then this one goes that wire. Okay. And then it's going to go from the outside in.
Oh my god. I'm losing the house so bad.
But thankfully, the
And then left to right.
they gave me money within like 2 days.
That's awesome.
This is very similar to the vibrating shuttle one that I have at home.
These repairs.
Yeah.
That I can probably do. You don't need to do that. You
I
got it.
got it. I got it. Sometimes I'm lucky.
All right.
All right. And you figure. Yeah. I just didn't like the big stitch. It's getting better.
So this is really large.
Isn't that weird?
I thought that you can just like a little twist.
No, this one takes a lot. It does take a lot. It's still tight at the top. I can see that it's pulling the bottom up, but this will work. This will stitch.
So the problem was so that the bobbin didn't click.
The bottom didn't click, and then you weren't between the tension discs. You were behind them.
Okay.
So there were those two things.
And then the top, the stitch was too long.
The stitch was way too long. It didn't like the longer stitch. It likes the smaller one a little better. It looks really good on the back. It's still a little, the bobbin's still a little loose, but I mean the top is still a little tight, but I can't loosen it any more than that. I mean it's pretty loose. So I think that's going to be stitchable. The slice is going this way.
Okay, mine's the same
So I
way.
want that to go off my stove this way, so it has to go backwards. So it's going to come off the middle. No, okay, one no. Raise your hand if you haven't gotten your machine to stitch something. You just have one here. Okay, so I'm going to come right over to you. You have to feel the way the pedal's going, going that way, and then go. If you want to start sewing and you have it so that your feet are down and the pedal's shaped like this, and you just start pushing your toes, and you stop pushing your toe, it's not stuck.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm pushing my toe and it's going in the right direction so I can keep it going that way. All right, I'm going to try to push my toe right way. Oh, I'm pushing my toe and it went the other way. So now I'll start with my heel instead, and it's going the wrong way. So I think it's kind of good that there's tarnish on here, because then you can see which way it's turning. So if you want your hands on your work, you can just lightly, I would level the pedal out so that it's flat. Because if you have it so that it's all the way in a down position like this, sometimes it gets stuck and it's hard to just test it.
Okay.
But if you have the pedal so that it's flat, you can look and see, if I'm pushing with my toe, it's going in the right direction, so I want to keep pushing with my toe. And I'll level out again. I'm motion with my heel up, it's going the other way, so I want to go toe. But sometimes it'll want to go heel first. You know, but you're still going to go toe, heel, toe, heel, toe, heel. It's just whether you go the toe first or the heel first is going to make the difference. And it has to be so that the things travel in one direction. So I'm going to get up and practice that, see if you can get it going in one direction constantly. Then we can take this and get start to practice. That's okay. But
Well,
I just,
I'll serve, how's that?
so I brought some hand crank machines. I'm going to take them out of their boxes, and when you're done with the slice of pizza, if you'd like to come hand crank a little bit, you can. But just not with pizza in your hand.
That seems fair.
Like 8th grade and I quit.
Wow.
Wow. This was done, actually this was done on a hand crank machine that I have here.
So the piece and the quilting.
Both.
Yeah.
Well, the piecing was done on the hand crank and the quilting was done on the treadle.
On the treadle. All right. I was going to say that would really hurt your hands.
Yeah. No, really. It's kind of hard to free motion when you're trying to hand crank at the same time, right? So this is one of them. I'm going to leave these out here too if people want to look at them. Well, I did free motion. Stippling is specifically just meandering without crossing the line, which is free motion. I don't just stipple, I do other designs as well. So you end up with perfect points. And this is the back. And I do it on a treadle machine.
Okay, Sarah. I'm sorry I'm late. Did I miss you?
You can see the stitching. So I'm going to leave this out here too.
Right? Are you sure? We're going to go back to it from 1 to 3.
Oh,
It was 10 to 3, that's okay.
So the individual pieces on this,
Came up.
you cut out strips of
This
fabric.
is my question.
This was the first one I ever quilted on a treadle machine. I don't know how many of you are quilters or if you follow, you heard of Angela Walters. I love her videos for free motion quilting.
Orange.
Oh, just
I
one.
started following her 15 years ago when I wanted to learn how to make feathers. And on Craftsy, I ordered a class on how to do feathers, and I've been a fan ever since. Well, I already know how to free motion quilt. I already long arm all my quilts. But it would be a real challenge if I tried to do it on a treadle machine. So I made her, this is her first challenge. She gave you the pattern for free. And then every week she'd do a different pattern inside a block. And then she did different things around the blocks. Well, you can see it better on the back. And now all your squares are the same size and they can be put together. And I have an example of a spring quilt downstairs that I'll show you. That was made on all of my antique machines. Twice a year I do an antique, I guess it's a workshop. I call it the Antique Playground for 2 to 3 hours. And you come in and go around the table with the hand crank machines, and I have 4 treadle machines set up. And so you're just putting strips together, you're making string blocks or jelly roll quilts, one or the other, and then I donate them to Project Linus. So for $20 you come in for 3 hours and you play on all the machines. And you listen to good music, and I put on swing music and big band, and it's good to treadle too, right? And so that's it. So I'm going to pull these out.
You need an antique radio.
I actually have an antique playlist that I have that goes for 4 hours. Yeah, on your radio. Yeah, I saw that.
Guys, this radio here is modified so I can hook up my computer to it or my iPod. So we do FDR's fireside chats and things like this.
That's so cool.
And then podcast after that.
We have a fireplace here, and we bring in couches for the kids one day, and they listen to like War of the Worlds and the old time radio shows and
The Green
the
Lantern.
Hindenburg explosion and things like that. All
I
from
want
that.
my 2 other kids to come back and have your.
That's what
Sad that I had.
you should borrow that to do when you do your thing.
My antique, yeah, my class. I do it in June and in December, so the next one's coming up December 5th.
I have Mr.
actually.
Bourne right now. Who's the other kid?
So this one is so quiet.
For criminal law.
My son Sam had this.
But I
Did you hear it?
know myself.
Did anybody hear this machine?
Oh, very.
Yeah.
You could sew by the fireside with your baby asleep in the cradle next to you back in 1890 and not disturb an ant.
So when were those ones made?
This one's like 1890.
And those predate the ones that we're working on, which are like 1900, 1920.
20s and
Yeah.
30s, yeah.
And that's a chain stitch?
This is a chain stitch, so there's no bobbin. If you want to come up and crank it when you're done eating, you can. And I'm going to open up this and you can see inside. You can see how the shuttle, how the hook works and picks up a stitch. So you can actually play with it and look at it. So that's the chain stitch. That's a Wilcox. Yeah. When you look at the patents for the sewing machines, the ones that actually got approved, they changed them. Every 6 months, every year, they were coming up with better ways to do the sewing machine, so they were always filing for new patents.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, when I was introducing myself, Singer was best known in the industry for the sewing machine, even though he might not have had the best sewing machine at the time. It was under the impression that White, who actually helped design Singer's first machine, went on to have a better machine on his own. But he didn't use the funds to advertise like Singer did, and he didn't offer, credit payments like Singer did, and so he didn't get as well known. White didn't, but White still makes a good machine today. So
The marketing wins the day.
it does, the marketing wins the day. So Pfister and Rossmann in Germany bought the rights to Singer's 128, I think is what this one is after. I have little blurbs on here so that you can see his Singer 12 and his 48K. So they bought the rights to both of those machines and they combined them into this machine, and then they did their own bobbin winding technique that's completely different than both of those machines, but the inner workings are all the Singer. But it's manufactured in Germany and they are so precise. German engineering is unbelievable, and when you crank this machine, like, you can feel how heavy and smooth it is, how perfect it is. It's incredible. I just love cranking them, so you guys are going to have fun doing this too. I don't have a piece of fabric on that. I have to run downstairs to get a piece of fabric so people can try that one.
But they did work for 100 years. They wouldn't break.
Right. So this machine, when you look at the decals on this machine, it was manufactured in Berlin, and they were very proud of that. And they had their Pfister and Rossmann emblem, and it used to say Berlin in it. And then in 1914, when the war broke out, they couldn't sell them to save their lives, right? So they weren't selling them all just in Berlin either. They were going to England, and they had agents that did the selling for them in London. And there's an emblem on the front of the machine that has the agent's name, and that's how you can date this one. This is dated 1914. It was the last year that the agent Pearson was working for Pfister and Rossmann, and so that's the only way to date this, because that's the emblem that's on the front of the machine. They didn't have serial numbers like all the Singer ones did, so there's no way to look up dates that way. But also you can tell that if it was 1914, it was done in Berlin, and it used to say Berlin on it, and what they did when the war broke out is they blacked out the name Berlin, and they continued to sell them in London under Pfister and Rossmann's name with an agent. But if people didn't know Pfister and Rossmann were German, they had no idea they were buying a German machine, and that's the only way they could continue selling them. They finally went out of business due to the war, and it got bought out, and Bernina bought them. Bernina owns the rights to Pfister and Rossmann. Not that they do any Pfister and Rossmann machines anymore, but they've become Bernina, which is another big name in sewing machines. This Jones machine is one that finishing school, and so much that she gave the okay for a marketing house to use her name in marketing the machine for Jones, and it boosted their sales 1,000-fold. And for years and years after, that's what made this machine sell so much in London, because it was a Princess Alexandria okay machine. You know?
You're too funny.
So that's another fun tidbit. So those are my tidbits. It seems like it's the same
Warnings
height
and
as
things
the
like that,
size.
so it's a very immersive kind of unit.
And it's a,
So
that's awesome.
we're gonna do
That
that.
is incredible. I can see doing that anyway.
Up into this part, we're hang on the bomb shelter
Because the way they're getting
portion,
free
but we collected everything to the house.
That's awesome.
But we haven't been able to do it for 2 years.
You're going to see the first two pieces that come off are a gray and a black. Right? I want you to take the gray and the black, because this is what's going to give us our pattern.
This way?
You're actually going to make it a block that looks like this. And then we're going to trim it to fit the paper so it's a perfect block. But at first it's going to be messy, so don't worry about it. This is what we're doing. So you take the gray and the black, and you put them right sides together. And it doesn't matter whether the black is on top or the gray is on top. What matters is that when you put it behind your paper, you're going to take your piece of paper, and you can see the dotted line is your seam allowance line, and the solid line is the line you're going to stitch on. So when you line this up behind your paper, you're going to line it up so that the edge of your fabric is on the dotted line, top and bottom. And you can kind of, you'll be able to see it poke out on the top and poke out on the bottom.
So wait, the edge is on the dotted line?
On the dotted line, because the dotted line is your seam allowance line. So you've got it matched up so that your edge of your fabric is along the dotted line, poking out of the top and the bottom, just a little bit from the top and a lot from the bottom. And then you're going to put it on your machine so that you're sewing on the solid line. Fabric's on the back when you're done sewing that, you're going to have to kind of finger press it to get it to stay flat. Paper on right to the very end. Okay, and kind of run your fingernail along it to see if you can get it to stay nice and flat. Normally you press it with the hair. And then now you're going to pick the next one off your pin and put it on whichever side you want. It doesn't matter. Right sides together with the next piece. And now you don't sew on the paper side anymore, you sew on the fabric side. So just lay it down right side, yep, whichever one you want, whether the black or the gray, doesn't matter. And go with the edge of your foot as a seam guide. Or a little bit, make it a little bigger than that, actually. It doesn't really tiny. And you're going to stitch along that, and you're going to like use the edge of your foot. Yeah, but just make sure that you're catching it all the way. It seems kind of bumpy, so I would need to press it. All right. Yeah, so I just like make my fingernail or the edge of your foot works good.
So how do you know your inch mark now?
You really don't with these feet, so you can use just the edge of your foot and make the fabric go just a little bit more past the edge of your foot.
So we're just going to sew right in there.
It doesn't matter if it's not a quarter of an inch, but you want, the edge of your foot on these antique machines is 1/8 of an inch, which is fine.
Actually, it's a
A
whole
quarter
other
is better though, so
Yeah.
if you think about past a little bit, just eyeball it and try to keep it the same.
Anyway,
Yeah,
thanks
that's
for
perfect.
comment, because I don't.
I bet you that is a perfect quarter inch, I can tell by looking at
I'm pretty,
You might be a quilter, are you a quilter?
I just started.
But you get used to the quarter of an inch.
I don't know how I do a lot of air tugging, and that for me is often is a quarter inch.
Yep.
I do
You're sewing through the page.
like that, so it's hard to know.
And it's going to keep your piece stabilized. It's also going to give us a way to trim your block exactly when you're done.
And look, I finally got my bob for my attention.
You did, you got it going. Now you know. You might want to use the edge of your scissors or use your fingernail and it'll press it better. It gives it a,
I have no finger.
What was supposed to be in the middle? Gray, black, and
I don't either really, but I use the back of my fingernail. I go like this on the thing, it's just the back of my fingernail.
Great.
Because I don't have. I brought an iron, but it's only one little iron and there's all these people and not want to get up every time, so we'll iron it at the end.
So, I don't think I missed too much, but we're taking our next two longest strips and just working out.
Yep, and working out from the center out. This, honestly, I did it on my treadle machine last night. It took me 15 minutes.
the black and white was the middle?
Yeah.
Okay.
Black and white on the middle.
Yeah, that was my error. I went ahead, I knew how to make it, and I just picked something else.
And the reason why we're doing that is so that we can get
Right, you get your
a
secondary pattern.
Wait, we're not supposed to sew all the way to the end, are we?
No, just to the end of the paper.
Okay.
Because we're going to end up trimming what's left over off, and that could be used on another block.
Right,
at
that's
any
what I
time. Right. Just keep going, work your way out from the center out. I don't know what happened to my wood roller. Oh, it's over here. When you don't have an iron handy or you don't have electricity, it's like a screen print roller. It's just a wood roller, right? You had no fingernails? Here, I'm going to gift this to you.
They're not even strong on them, because I had dip on them.
Yep.
Took it off and.
Look at how nice that works, see?
Yeah,
The
that
wood
actually is
roller
really
is the way to go. Or the edge of your scissors. Pretty cool. And I have a cutting mat, and I have a rotary cutter and a ruler, but like you can just use your scissors to trim them to the shape of the paper square too.
And then if I mean, like, is it going to be coming for one class in one day? Or is it going to be
Anybody
three
need some
classes
special help?
on that day?
Look, you guys are all being very productive. See, they wanted a project, Jim.
We are Santa's elves. We are Santa's elves.
Yeah, the college embroidery is done by hand. I learned how to do this. I lived in Hungary when I was 11 for a year, and in school they taught us how to do this kind of embroidery. That's handwork. My sister married a Hungarian and lived in Hungary for 30 years. I taught her how to do the embroidery. This is her work, not mine. And then her husband's cousin, on a treadle machine, did all the lace.
How do you make lace on a treadle machine?
I have a video that'll show you. You guys have to go to my YouTube channel and check it out. I will give you my card.
So that's the first two. They're right sides together. And
I have cards.
right, right. And you use the line.
Yes.
All right.
Yes?
I don't know how to do a bobbin.
Direction. So go ahead and start treadling. Make sure it's going in the same direction.
How did I get this one? The shuttle one over here. I thought I put all the shuttles over there.
You want to know when I can come?
Yeah. Oh, that's perfect. Look at it. There you go. As fast as you want. Go fast, fast, fast.
Okay. Can I get a job?
Yes. You're hired.
I'll be a reenactment.
See how nice that is?
Oh, that is nice.
That is the new and improved. Before they had this little thing with the heart on it,
Yeah.
you had to do it with your hand.
Oh, yeah.
And so this is the new and improved bobbin winder.
Nice. Very nice.
It didn't need the rubber wheel, so whoever
Sounds
refurbished
great.
these didn't realize.
You just, okay.
So you have an extra rubber wheel.
Nice.
That's it. I'll
So
put it in my
do I
box.
stop now or?
Yeah, yeah.
Is this good enough?
You're gonna go until you see it right up to the edge of that, the end of that spool.
Really? Okay.
Yep. Almost there. You don't want it to go over because then it'll get stuck on it.
Yeah.
One more time back and forth. Good. Very good. But that's a good thing to tell the kids too. If you have a kid, I have something I can share. So if you have,
Okay.
if one of the kids you're working with cannot figure out the coordination with making the treadle work, with always having it turning in the correct direction, it doesn't mean it's the end of the world. They could hand crank something out. They could just keep turning it by hand. It's going to be much slower, but have them pick the smaller project. And they can just hand crank that machine to make it work. Because you could spend days with somebody and never get them to figure that out. I've had people come into the studio and they get it in 3 minutes, and I have somebody who's come in 6 times for a couple of hours at a whack and still cannot get the treadle. Some people are treadle challenged, that's all there is to it. So,
I tried to straighten out hers. I can't go backwards on that one. It's so easy.
to go forwards all the time. Yeah, all right, so some of them are different. Yeah, they are different. So that's an option for the kids, to hand crank out their project if they can't.
Now I get it one with mom's.
Yeah.
Can we crank to the size of the paper or a quarter-inch out?
To the size of the paper. If anyone's interested and they want to help make a piece of this.
Good stuff.
That is a feathered are.
Very nice.
And this one, the name of this pattern is called Antique Lighthouse, and that's why I bought it. Because we're working on antiques, right? And I put an old-fashioned print on the back. Yeah, I do labels on all my quilts.
Do I need to punch my card, you know?
This stays with me though.
Okay.
It all gets put together and then I have it as an antique quilt made on antique machines and I can use it to share. I'll be sharing my antique machines at the Vermont Quilt Festival and I'll be hanging in antique quilts and I can say it was done in a quilt class in Westford.
They're in person this year.
Some of it. I'm hoping.
It was virtual.
Yeah. This year it's supposed to be in person. Okay, so very nice. We have the first block done. Very pretty. You guys are all going to do just as well, I'm sure. And I'll take them up front so that I can start putting them together. Okay, so here's your unit. It looks a lot, but it's not bad. I'll tell you, that's your section 1, your section 2. You won't need this paper after you put the first section on. Normally, if you have a printed fabric, you want the wrong side of the fabric to the wrong side of the paper. We're going to do what we just did, and we're going to line up that dotted line on the edge of your fabric. But you got to put your section 2 on there. So these have a sew side. And so if you would fold this on that single line, and you had it on you like this, your sew side is also in that side. And it just goes underneath that. And the sew side is away from you and the fat side is to your left. So you've got that to your left and you know the sew side's away from you. So that's the sew side. Those have to meet up. Wash, right? Your finger press it open. It's going to be bigger than it needs to be. It's going to go past that dotted line. So you're going to fold it on that dotted line and trim with your scissors right next to the fold.
Okay.
Because that's your single lines.
Right.
And then your next piece, section 3, that comes off the pile, and there's your sew side.
Here's the real creativity right here.
It's like a one color against the narrow side of the other. So that makes more sense to you visually?
Right, now I got
that. Yeah. Yeah, so this is a very large version of this brush. So, and then this, under here, once you sew,
Nice.
Another one done? Okay, so there's another one done. Awesome. I have a couple more for you.
Okay.
Plastic, huh?
So Donna, I was able to do a bob and all by myself.
Oh, I'm so happy. I'm sorry, I kind of had to drop the ball a little bit because everybody was in every different direction.
Oh yeah, that's all right. So I'm like, I'm perfect. I know how to do this now.
Oh, good, good. And you'll be able to show somebody else too.
Yes, exactly.
All right, so you're over here, right? Let me sit you down with this.
Anybody else have a block that needs trimming?
Do you want us to clean up any of this stuff, put it somewhere?
I know that that's my sew side. And I'm going to place it underneath here so I can read my line 1 is facing me. It's not upside
Not at all. This is the activity.
Nice to meet you too. Thanks for coming out and volunteering. So there it is. And now I'm just going to sew on my solid line 1. And then I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to press it open just like we did on the string blocks.